Okay, we are on to project number 5 for sheet metal. We're going to complete the corner double lock seam. When we get this completed, it should measure a dimension of 3 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches long. And accuracy is plus or minus a 1/16 of an inch after it's completed. So on the next page of the project here, what you're going to see is we've got 2 parts given on the plans. And we need to have them measure 3 3/16 by 4 inches in height there for part A. And part B needs to measure 4 plus the quarter plus the 3/16, which is 4 7/16 by 4 inches tall on that particular part. So I've cut them already. Right here I've got them. And they should measure just fine. 3 3/16 by 4 inches tall. And then the second part, 4 7/16 by 4 inches tall as well. So the first thing that I did next then was laid out this 3/16 mark on the edge of the part. Now this particular scribe does have a 3/16 marking here on that second indentation, so I took it on the edge of the table and scribed that particular mark, and that was all we had to do for this particular piece. The second one we had to do a little more work. Obviously it needed a 3/16 marking first, so the same deal with the scribe, the 3/16 setup, and we scribed that. And then we followed it by the quarter inch. Now that's 3/16 plus the quarter gives us 7/16 inch dimensions there, but the scribe does not have any of that. So I used the combination square here, and I set it up as 7/16, and I marked that right on the edge there utilizing the scribe, or some people will just drag the square down it, but that's up to you. Now that I have these 2 particular parts made and drawn with my dimension marks on it, let's go on to the next page and look at our forming views here. So the first part number 1 or pattern 1 that they've got labeled here, it says to take the 3/16 and we're going to bend that to a 90 degrees. So let's take that over to the apron break and let's complete that part of the procedure. So right on my mark there, we'll set the 3/16 up where it belongs. Maybe that's a little bit long yet. Taking the time to really make sure everything was lined up just perfectly. And you can measure your 3/16 with the tape measure as well, like we've done in the past. And we're going to pull that up to a 90, just like that. Okay. Now that we have that particular part made, we're going to set that aside. That'll be complete. Then we're going to look at part number 2 and take our 3/16 and we're going to bend that all the way over, but we're not going to close that down. We're going to let a small gap inside of that piece. So in order to do that, to make that formation and fabricate that connection, we're again going to set it in there at the 3/16 mark, making sure everything's squared up and true with the edge of the apron there. Again, you can measure it if you need to. 3/16 on both edges there. And this time, rather than stopping at the 90, we're going to pull that all the way up until it stops against the apron of the brake there. At which point, we've got a part that looks something like this. But we do need to bring that down just a little bit tighter. So at this point in time, we're going to slip it on the outside edge there. And I don't know if you can see the handle. Maybe if I move over here on the edge, you'll be able to see the handle in the view there. And see that I don't necessarily close it all the way, but I bring that closer. This would be all the way closed, and I stopped about here with that apron. Now it's got this little edge there where that other piece of metal will be able to fit into. So looking back at our pattern, you see that it matches with that little lip on that that second part there. So if we go to the third assembly diagram, or the third fabrication view, we take it's the assembly of part 1 as well as part 2. We're going to take the first part, which is sitting like this over here, and we're going to carry that over to the bottom. And then we're going to take the second part like this, and we're going to turn it, and we'll actually hook that lip that we previously fabricated. At this point, the edges of the piece should line up just fine, but they're not tight. So before I move on to the third view, we're going to actually put the part in there, hold it up against the edge, and tighten that seam up with the apron brake. So it can be a little challenging to do. We're going to slip it in there, make sure everything is taut. This piece pushed up as far as it possibly can be against the brake, and as well as lined up this direction. And we're going to close that seam all the way now using that handle over here. At this point in time, it is still slightly loose, but it's considerably tighter than it has been in the previous attempts. So sometimes you have to go to the center of the apron or different parts of the brake that are tighter and finish them. Okay. At this point in time, we've got that portion of the part completed. Now what it says to do is to take this edge in the brake, and we're going to fold that up till it hits a 90 degree to complete this particular edge, and we should finish with a 3-inch piece here and a 4-inch piece here, and then 4 inches tall. So let's show you how to do that. This time we're going to stick it in the brake the other direction, and we're going to push that all the way in there until it stops at the edge. And with a little hand tension back here, making sure your edges are lined up perfectly, we're just going to stop that, and we should be able to pull that up with a little bit of effort on there. And this can be somewhat challenging. You may have to turn it around and do this a couple different routes as well. Sometimes you can hand form it as well. So we're getting closer there. At which point, if it's past the 45 degree, you can turn the piece around, put it all the way in the brake, and then finish closing that fitting. But it bends it out. At this point, it looks something like this here, but we still need to have our 90 degree. So we'll slip it back in there on the edge. Make sure everything's lined up again where it belongs. Right on the fitting portion. Square it up, pull it down tight, and then just simply pull it up to the 90 degree that we originally had. And with that, we have our completed corner seam. It's still slightly loose, but that's pretty tight. You can't do too much more than that. It's not like there's a big gap in between the edges or anything of the sort like those. And if the piece was 4 foot long, it would definitely hold together even better than that. So, which brings us up to our perspective view, and we'll take our measurements and determine if we made this piece right. So it measures 4 inches wide, 4 inches tall, and 3 inches high. And I think that's going to meet our plus or minus 16th spec all the way around. All right, that takes care of that project, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.